Now everyone will know how cool I am. Wait, am I recording? No! Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, or Spooky's House of Jump Scares as it used to be known, is a first-person survival horror game developed by Lag Studios and released for PC in July of 2015. In Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, you play as a history enthusiast who decides to visit a seemingly abandoned mansion in the hopes of learning more about the building and its history. However, before long, you find yourself thrust into a living nightmare and must fight your way through 1,000 rooms filled with all kinds of ghouls and ghosts in order to make your escape. Considering how popular Spooky's Mansion is, I'm surprised by how little information I was actually able to find online about the game's history or development. But regardless, Spooky's Mansion is easily one of the most popular free games out there and has developed a strong cult following over the years. There have been fan-made mods, cartoons, and even a really catchy song written by the Living Tombstone that has been stuck looping in my head for the last few weeks.
So have you heard of that house on the hill? I hear it's haunted and crawling with all types of evil. But I am not afraid of any legends or laws, and I want answers to what might be behind all these doors.
Similar to games like Amnesia, The Dark Descent, or Outlast, Spooky's Mansion is a first-person survival horror game that emphasizes running from your enemies instead of trying to face them head-on. Once you hit new game, you are immediately thrown into the mansion and are introduced to the game's titular character, Spooky.
Hello, I am Spooky. And this is my home. Can you, humble player, make it through 1,000 rooms? Can you find what lies at the end? Or is there even an end? Because I don't really know. Anyway, just go.
And with that very thought-provoking and heartwarming speech out of the way, you begin your quest to try and make it through Spooky's Mansion alive. Thankfully, the game doesn't throw you straight in at the deep end. In fact, for the first 60 or so rooms, you are completely safe from anything that could potentially kill you. The worst thing you have to worry about are these cardboard cutouts that will occasionally startle you. The funny thing about these cardboard cutouts is that they really highlight how pathetic jump scares actually are. An ice cream cone, a cartoon octopus, or a piece of bread aren't traditionally considered terrifying objects. Well, I mean, a piece of toast jumping out at someone with celiac disease would probably be the most fucking terrifying thing that person had ever experienced. But regardless, when these otherwise mundane objects suddenly appear, accompanied by a deafening horror sting, it will make you jump out of your skin every time. And if my footage and erratic mouse movements are anything to go by, these fucking things were still startling me all the way up to the end of the game. Just goes to show that with most jump scares in video games, it's not really the enemy itself that is making you jump. It's more the loud sudden noise that's responsible for getting a reaction out of you. Anyways, as I said earlier, the first few dozen rooms are very uneventful in Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion. Aside from the odd disturbing picture every now and then, there is practically nothing that will have you on the edge of your seat. It is also worth noting that you will be seeing these exact same rooms hundreds of times over during your playthrough, and this is one of my biggest complaints with this game. There simply isn't enough room variety to keep things interesting for the 6 or so hours it will take you to beat this game. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of cool environments you will get to visit during the campaign, but these make up a very small percentage of the overall game time. Roughly 80% of the time, you'll be traversing through these bland, repetitive environments over and over again, and it does get quite tiring by the end. There isn't even much in the way of puzzles in the game either. Occasionally you will find these mazes that require you to move through doors in a certain order, but that really is about it. Thankfully, this is one of my only complaints I have about Spooky's Mansion, since practically everything else is stellar. At room 50, you will reach an elevator where you are given an opportunity to save your progress before descending down further into the mansion. In most save rooms, you can usually find a short note written by someone who was previously trapped in the mansion. These notes are usually worth seeking out, as they not only fill you in on the backstory of the mansion, but will sometimes also include little hints on how to deal with certain monster types. Some of these notes are also really good at filling you with anxiety about what you might encounter later on in the mansion. At around room 65, Spooky's mansion finally takes the training wheels off and actually throws something quite hostile and deadly at you. This is Specimen 2, otherwise known as Goo. If you are wondering what Specimen 1 was, well, yeah, there's your answer. Obviously, since this is the game's first true enemy, Specimen 2 isn't especially dangerous or difficult to avoid. You can easily outrun it as long as you keep moving. However, it is possible to take a wrong turn in certain rooms and hit a dead end, which will give Specimen 2 ample time to catch up and attack you. Thankfully, its attacks only take about a third of your health, and your health will automatically regenerate over time, assuming you are able to avoid taking further damage for long enough. Once you make it through enough rooms, your current pursuer will stop chasing you, and you will be safe for the time being. In fact, for a surprising percentage of the game, you won't be getting chased by anything and can explore the mansion at your leisure. This is a problem because, as I said earlier, there is a lot of reused rooms in Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion, and going through the same exact rooms over and over again without anything exciting to break up the monotony can get extremely tiresome after a while. That doesn't mean that you won't occasionally stumble across an interesting area here or there. For example, every now and again, you'll find these little arcade rooms that contain little mini-games you can play. One of these games is called Mall of the Spook. In this game, you play as Spooky, armed with a knife, and you have to stab as many innocent civilians as possible before time runs out. Now, why Lag Studios decided to design a minigame based off my own life, I couldn't tell you, but I can't lie, this shit is kind of addictive. It's also kind of addictive in the game as well. So anyways, the other minigame is called Mr. Spook, which is basically a Pac-Man clone. Yeah, not a huge amount of replay value with this one. I also like that when you try to enter your name into the arcade leaderboards, this happens. So it was probably around room 100 that I started to get a bit cocky and full of myself, thinking that this game was going to be a piece of piss and that knocking it through at me could possibly lead to a game over. I was quickly proven quite incorrect with that thinking. You see, if there's one thing Spooky's Mansion loves to do, it's fuck with the player. You might think you've got the whole game figured out, only for something to hit you from completely out of left field. For example, once I got to room 103, instead of simply taking this door right next to me, I decided that I wanted to explore this room a bit more. So I decided to start walking down this long hallway and shit got weird. You probably won't die a huge amount while playing Spooky's Mansion, but the punishment for death can be quite severe, with a game over sending you back to your last save point, which could be a couple of dozen rooms back. But like I said, as long as you keep your wits about you and take the time to actually learn how each specimen operates, death should be a rarity. The next specimen has a cool build-up, with you exploring a lab and reading foreboding documents left by scientists working in the area. Unfortunately, once you come face to face with the creature itself, it's kind of a letdown. It's a weird spider-like creature, which is very easy to run away from. In fact, unless you actually slow down and stop running, you are unlikely to even catch a glimpse of the creature. Once I managed to lose the beast, I found this room with a huge computer. Accessing this computer allows you to look up a database of all the specimens currently found in Spooky's mansion. Looking up these documents could be considered a spoiler, as it does show you what future specimens will look like, but it also gives you vital clues as to how to survive against them, so I would recommend using these computers whenever you find them. So it was at this point that I started to find the game to be a little repetitive. The rooms were constantly repeating, and while the monsters were initially creepy, once I figured out that all you had to do to avoid them was run away, they quickly lost their scare factor. That was until I met Specimen 5. So at around room 210, I found myself in a location that will seem instantly familiar to any fan of the Silent Hill series, which should be all of you, by the way. The developers managed to nail the look and feel of a typical Silent Hill environment, down to the rusted walls, metal grates, and fucking locked doors as far as the eye can see. Even the atmospheric music sounds like it came straight from the brain of Akira Yamaoka. It was also at this point in the game where I realised Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion might be one of the most terrifying games I've ever played. This is Specimen 5. Its design is obviously very similar to an enemy you'd find in a Silent Hill game, most notably the nurses. Specimen 5 is slow but deadly.
Not to mention, much sexier than you.
Specimen 5 also has one particularly nasty trick up its sleeve that nearly caused me to have a goddamn heart attack the first time it happened. It can fuck with the environment and cause the walls to exhibit all kinds of visual effects that can cause the player to become disoriented, which can easily lead to them accidentally running the wrong way, right into Specimen 5's blade. I know it doesn't look like it here, but I was practically hyperventilating while playing this section. It also doesn't help that whenever the walls start to change, doors are hidden from view, which means you need to start feeling around for the exit. And God help you if you accidentally go the wrong way and hit a locked door. Specimen 5 can kill you in only 2 attacks, so you need to put as much distance from yourself and it as possible. As terrifying as I found this particular sequence, it was also exhilarating to play, and actually had me excited to see what the rest of the game would throw at me. Every few 100 rooms, you will meet up with Spooky, who will congratulate you on your progress in the most sarcastic way imaginable.
So, you made it this far. That's great. I shall grant you a gift for your progress. So just keep going.
Spooky is great, I love her. As I don't want to spoil the entirety of the game in this video, I will quickly highlight a few of my favourite specimens in the game, while endeavouring not to spoil any late game surprises. The Merchant has one of the most unnerving intro sequences of any specimen in the game. You find yourself in a creepy temple, and while exploring, you come across these letters that detail the Merchant's incredibly disturbing backstory. Like, for real, this shit sent shivers up my spine. Then, once you actually come face to face with the Merchant, it's the creepiest fucking shit ever. He just stands there, smiling and not saying anything. I mean, to be fair, this is how I behave when I'm around most women, which is why I'm banned from most female clothing stores. But still, it was at this point that I began to get extremely creeped out, and began running for the exit. The Merchant is actually one of the few enemies in the game that can catch up to you instantly, which means running away isn't always the best course of action. It's better to actually face the Merchant head on. This will stop him teleporting for a limited amount of time and will give you a chance to put some distance between yourself and him. I actually died quite a few times from the Merchant because I figured simply running away would always be the best course of action for most enemies in the game. It was refreshing to actually have to stop and learn an enemy's behaviour and attack patterns for once. Also, the death cutscene that plays when the merchant kills you is the stuff of nightmares. Specimen 10, aka Parasite, is one of my favourite specimens in the game, mainly because it reminds me of something you'd see from an 80s sci-fi horror film, like The Thing. I love the concept behind this specimen. Basically, as long as you keep your cool and don't run too far ahead of the parasite, you should be perfectly safe. But if you freak out and run away as fast as possible, this happens. Ugh!
They're still sexier than you are.
This specimen requires you to keep your cool in order to survive, which makes a refreshing change from just running away from everything as quickly as possible. One of the final specimens you will encounter in the game is Specimen 13, aka Mermaid. For such a late game monster, it's disappointing that the mermaid is such a derivative enemy, with her clearly being heavily inspired by the water monster from Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Basically, as long as you are standing on a crate, you are safe from the mermaid, which makes it almost impossible to die from her, because even if you lose health from one of her attacks, you can simply stand on a crate until your health fully regenerates. While the mermaid is invisible, you can still make out her position by observing any splashes in the water. The mermaid is not one of my favourite specimens in the game, but I still wanted to highlight her, as she serves as a very disappointing final challenge before you take on the last boss. So that is Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion. Honestly, I didn't intend to talk at length about this game, because it's quite old and there are far better videos out there that cover this game in greater depth than I ever could. But what can I say, I fucking love this game, and I wanted my review of it to be a labour of love. While far from perfect, the fact that a game as enjoyable and terrifying as this is available on Steam completely free is mind-boggling to me. However, if you would like to pay the developers of Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion actual money, they did end up remaking the game a few years later. It's a fantastic upgrade and well worth the money. In fact, I'm going to review it right now. I didn't expect much going into Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion, but I ended up getting about 8 hours of the most fun I've ever had with a survival horror game. It goes without saying, but you need to check out this game if you have a PC. It will literally run on a toaster, so there is no excuse for you not to give it a go. It truly blew me away.